So what do you think he did? Actually, he thought she was his housemaid and began ordering her about.
"Mary Ann," he said, "go home this very minute and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan. Quick now!"
Perhaps he couldn't see very clearly with his pink eyes, for I'm sure Alice doesn't look very like a housemaid, does she? However, she was a very good-natured little girl, so wasn't a bit offended, but ran off to the rabbit's house as quick as she could. It was lucky she found the door open, for if she had had to ring, I suppose the real Mary Ann would have come to open the door, and she would never have let Alice come in. And I'm sure it was very lucky she didn't meet the real Mary Ann as she trotted upstairs, for I'm afraid she would have taken Alice for a robber. So at last she found her way into the rabbit's room, and there was a pair of gloves lying on the table, and she was just going to take them up and go away when she happened to see a little bottle on the table. And of course it had the words, "Drink me," on the label. And of course Alice drank some. Well, I think that was rather lucky too, don't you? For if she hadn't drunk any, all this wonderful adventure that I'm going to tell you about wouldn't have happened at all, and wouldn't that have been a pity? You're getting so used to Alice's adventures that I dare say you can guess what happened next. If you can't, I'll tell you. She grew, and she grew, and she grew, and in a very short time the room was full of Alice, just in the same way as a jar is full of jam. There was Alice all the way up to the ceiling, and Alice in every corner of the room. The door opened inwards, so of course there wasn't any room to open it, so when the rabbit got tired of waiting and came to fetch his gloves for himself, of course he couldn't get in. So what do you think he did? Now we come to the picture. He sent Bill the lizard up to the roof of the house and told him to get down the chimney. But Alice happened to have one of her feet in the fireplace, so when she heard Bill coming down the chimney, she just gave a little tiny kick, and away went Bill, flying up into the sky. Poor little Bill! Don't you pity him very much? How frightened he must have been! End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The dear little puppy. Well, it doesn't look like such a very little puppy, does it? But then, you see, Alice had grown very small indeed. And that's what makes the puppy look so large. When Alice had eaten one of those little magic cakes that she found in the White Rabbit's house, it made her get quite small directly, so that she could get through the door, or else she could never have got out of the house again. Wouldn't that have been a pity? Because then she wouldn't have dreamed all the other curious things that we're going to read about. So it really was a little puppy, you see, and isn't it a little pet? And look at the way it's barking at the little stick that Alice is holding out for it. You can see she was a little afraid of it all the time, because she's got behind that great thistle for fear it should run over her. That would have been just about as bad for her as it would be for you to be run over by a wagon and 4 horses. Have you got a little pet puppy at your home? If you have, I hope you are always kind to it and give it nice things to eat. Once upon a time, I knew some little children about as big as you, and they had a little pet dog of their own, and it was called Dash. And this is what they told me about its birthday treat.
Do you know, one day we remembered it was Dash's birthday that day, so we said, let's give Dash a nice birthday treat, like what we have on our birthdays. So we thought and we thought. Now, what is it we like best of all on our birthdays? And we thought and we thought, and at last we all called out together. Why, it's oatmeal porridge, of course. So, of course, we thought Dash would be quite sure to like it very much, too. So we went to the cook, and we got her to make a saucerful of nice oatmeal porridge. And then we called Dash into the house, and we said, now, Dash, you're going to have your birthday treat. We expected Dash would jump for joy. But it didn't, one bit. So we put the saucer down before it, and we said, Now, Dash, don't be greedy. Eat it nicely like a good dog. So Dash just tasted it with the tip of his tongue, and then it made, oh, such a horrid face. And then, do you know, it did hate it so. It wouldn't eat a bit more of it. So we had to put it all down its throat with a spoon. I wonder if Alice will give this little puppy some porridge. I don't think she can, because she hasn't got any with her. I can't see any saucer in the picture. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Blue Caterpillar. Would you like to know what happened to Alice after she had got away from the puppy? It was far too large an animal, you know, for her to play with. I don't suppose you would much enjoy playing with a young hippopotamus, would you? You would always be expecting to be crushed as flat as a pancake under its great heavy feet. So Alice was very glad to run away while it wasn't looking. Well, she wandered up and down, and she didn't know what in the world to do to make herself grow up to the right size again. Of course, she knew that she had to eat or drink something. That was the regular rule, you know. But she couldn't guess what thing. However, she soon came to a great mushroom that was so tall that she couldn't see over the top of it without standing on tiptoe. And what do you think she saw? Something that I'm sure you never talked to in all your life. It was a large blue caterpillar. I'll tell you soon what Alice and the caterpillar talked about, but first let us have a good look at the picture. That curious thing standing in front of the caterpillar is called a hookah, and it's used for smoking. The smoke comes through that long tube that winds round and round like a serpent. And do you see its long nose and chin? At least they look exactly like a nose and chin, don't they? But they really are two of its legs. You know a caterpillar has got quantities of legs. You can see some more of them further down. What a bother it must be to a caterpillar counting over such a lot of legs every night to make sure it hasn't lost any of them. And another great bother must be having to settle which leg it had better move first. I think if you had 40 or 50 legs, and if you wanted to go a walk, you'd be such a time in settling which leg to begin with that you'd never go a walk at all. And what did Alice and the caterpillar talk about, I wonder? Well, Alice told it how very confusing it was being first one size, then another, and the caterpillar asked her if she liked the size she was just then. And Alice said she would like to be just a little bit larger. 3 inches was such a wretched height to be. Just mark off 3 inches on the wall, about the length of your middle finger, and you'll see what size she was. And the caterpillar told her one side of the mushroom would make her grow taller, and the other side would make her grow shorter. So Alice took 2 little bits of it with her to nibble, and managed to make herself quite a nice comfortable height before she went on to visit the Duchess. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Pig Baby. Would you like to hear about Alice's visit to the Duchess? It was a very interesting visit indeed, I can assure you. Of course she knocked at the door to begin with, but nobody came, so she had to open it for herself. Now, if you look at the picture, you'll see exactly what Alice saw when she got inside. The door led right into the kitchen, you see. The Duchess sat in the middle of the room nursing the baby. The baby was howling. The soup was boiling. The cook was stirring the soup. The cat, it was a Cheshire cat, was grinning as Cheshire cats always do. All these things were happening just as Alice went in. The Duchess has a beautiful cap and gown, hasn't she? But I'm afraid she hasn't got a very beautiful face. The baby, well, I dare say you've seen several nicer babies than that, and more good-temper ones, too. However, take a good look at it, and we'll see if you know it again next time you meet it. The cook, well, you may have seen nicer cooks once or twice, but I'm nearly sure you've never seen a nicer cat. Now have you? And wouldn't you like to have a cat of your own, just like that one, with lovely green eyes, and smiling so sweetly?
The Duchess was very rude to Alice, and no wonder. Why, she even called her own baby Pig. And it wasn't a pig, was it? And she ordered the cook to chop off Alice's head, though of course the cook didn't do it. And at last she threw the baby at her. So Alice caught the baby and took it away with her, and I think that was about the best thing she could do. So she wandered away through the wood carrying the ugly little thing with her. And a great job it was to keep hold of it, it wriggled about so. But at last she found out that the proper way was to keep tight hold of its left foot and its right ear. But don't you try to hold on to a baby like that, my child. There are not many babies that like being nursed in that way. Well, and so the baby kept grunting and grunting, so that Alice had to say to it, quite seriously, "If you're going to turn into a pig, my dear, I'll have nothing more to do with you. Mind now." And at last she looked down into its face, and what do you think had happened to it? Look at the picture and see if you can guess. Why, that's not the baby Alice was nursing, is it? I knew you wouldn't know it again, though I told you to take a good look at it. Yes, it is the baby, and it's turned into a little pig. So Alice put it down and let it trot away into the wood, and she said to herself, "It was a very ugly baby, but it makes a rather handsome pig, I think." Don't you think she was right? End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Cheshire Cat. All alone, poor Alice. No baby, not even a pig to keep her company. So you may be sure she was very glad indeed when she saw the Cheshire Cat perched up in a tree over her head. The cat has a very nice smile, no doubt, but just look what a lot of teeth it's got. Isn't Alice just a little shy of it? Well, yes, a little. But then, it couldn't help having teeth, you know, and it could have helped smiling, supposing it had been cross. So on the whole, she was glad. Doesn't Alice look very prim, holding her head so straight up, and with her hands behind her, just as if she were going to say her lessons to the cat? And that reminds me, there's a little lesson I want to teach you while we're looking at the picture of Alice and the cat. Now, don't be in a bad temper about it, my dear child. It's a very little lesson indeed. Do you see that foxglove growing close to the tree? And do you know why it's called a foxglove? Perhaps you think it's got something to do with a fox. No, indeed. Foxes never wear gloves. The right word is folksglove. Did you ever hear that fairies used to be called the good folk? Now we've finished the lesson, and we'll wait a minute till you've got your temper again. Well, do you feel quite good-natured again? No temper ache? No crossness about the corners of the mouth? Then we'll go on. "Cheshire Puss," said Alice. Wasn't that a pretty name for a cat? "Would you tell me which way I ought to go from here?" And so the Cheshire Cat told her which way she ought to go if she wanted to visit the Hatter, and which way to go to visit the March Hare. "They're both mad," said the cat. And then the cat vanished away, just like the flame of a candle when it goes out. So Alice set off to visit the March Hare. And as she went along, there was the cat again. And she told it she didn't like it coming and going so quickly. So this time the cat vanished quite slowly, beginning with the tail and ending with the grin. Wasn't that a curious thing? A grin without any cat. Would you like to see one? If you turn up the corner of this leaf, you'll have Alice looking at the grin, and she doesn't look a bit more frightened than when she was looking at the cat, does she? End of Chapter 9.